Well, we're a little more than 2 weeks away from the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump, and one thing he's been consistent with throughout the election and since is his use of social media. It's raised many questions as to how he's going to use it once he takes office. And joining us this morning is Dr. Lee Hanna, an assistant professor of political science at Wright State University. Good morning. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
This has clearly been a hot-button issue for the whole political season, really, and it has continued since the election now. What are you anticipating as we head into the soon-to-be presidential campaign or presidency of Donald Trump as it pertains to social media?
Yes, it is very curious and very surprising. In some ways, he is like any president, kind of updating to the latest technology. Sure. And so if you think of Obama's election in '08, we didn't even have Twitter yet. So this is kind of the latest way for him to communicate directly with his supporters, with his enemies, and everything else. But what is surprising is that statements that we may think would need hours of behind-the-door meetings to discuss how we carefully state the American position, he seems to be pretty comfortable to just fire those out immediately.
And he's certainly not afraid to take some shots. I mean, obviously, even in his Happy New Year's tweet, he called out his enemies. Is this something that you think will continue throughout his presidency, or will that tone down a little bit?
That's an excellent question, and I think it will, in many ways, it will depend on his relationship with the press. If he can salvage that in some ways and use the more traditional means to get his message out, then perhaps he'll go that route. But what it seems like he does is it becomes both. His supporters would say it allows him to speak directly to the people and share the truth. His opponents would say he does a great job of kind of getting the press off topic, because suddenly they have to go chase the meaning of this tweet rather than maybe continue to scrutinize an appointment or some policy position.
We heard the term millennials so often throughout this election process. You obviously are a professor and you teach that generation, and you teach a class specifically as politics relates to social media. What are you talking to your kids about over the last semester and now as we head into Donald Trump's presidency?
Yes, well, in some ways you're trying to determine to what extent is this the future and to what extent is Donald Trump just this huge exception to kind of everything that we understand about politics. That's part of it. And then the other thing that I think is important for people of all ages is just information literacy. How can we know that information is reliable, that gets often shared before it's really vetted by reporters or journalists? And so that's a big challenge as well, is just this future where there's so many choices. Are we actually getting the truth?
Donald Trump obviously hasn't been shy in sharing his opinions of the media, but we were talking about this just before we came on. The importance of the press corps for Donald Trump once he becomes president.
Yes, absolutely. Well, important in some very key ways. You might remember when he kind of got criticized for going to the steakhouse and ditching the press corps. Well, if something happens to Donald Trump or happens to any sitting president, the press corps typically is always right there. And that, in many ways, kind of spares us of these conspiracy theories or these concerns about what really happened. And so in some ways, it prevents some of these conspiracy theories from getting out of hand. But then also, we believe the press is the fourth estate, that they do offer accountability and information that we need as voters.
It'll certainly be something interesting to track as we go forward. A presidency, I think, unlike any other. Dr. Lee Hanna of Wright State University, thanks so much for coming in. Appreciate your time this morning. Mike?